Focus on the process, forget about the results, and it'll just happen. Just do the small things every single day.
Yeah.
So what's up, everybody? Today is April 4th, 2024. This is episode 4 of the Just One More podcast. Like I said before, we're going to try and bring some more content, speed this up a little bit to try to, keep you engaged and bring updates as we get updates in the real estate world and really everything else that we talk about. Today, we got a special guest. We got a guy that I've known for quite a while. His name is Ryan Cover. Is it Cover or Cover?
That's a good question. That's way to start off. Cover. It is Cover, but it's okay. I go by anything. Ryan, Cover, Cove.
Like French?
It's like a duvet.
Oh,
whatever works. Anywho, so we got Ryan Cover here.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why we brought Ryan on because Ryan does a lot of consulting work for the team, and he's probably one of the better. I wouldn't call him a coach more so than I would like a mentor for young agents and even current active agents that have been in the business. So, Ryan, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Appreciate that. Well, first and foremost, appreciate you guys having me on. My last name is Cover, just for anybody out there wondering. So I am blessed to be a part in a position where I'm coaching, consulting a lot of young agents, a lot of experienced agents. But really my niche is basically taking from a lead intake in the real estate world. We call it leads, but any client that comes in, basically nurturing that client, talking to that client, converting that client and getting them under contract. So once it gets under contract, it's really not my niche. That's where, anything under contract and all the way to the transaction closing is not on my plate really for coaching and consulting. It's more of database management, lead intake, and then converting those leads, nurturing those leads, best practices around that. So really excited. I've been in the industry. It goes by really quickly. So 2017 is when I got on, had 2 great mentors that, Phil Lopez and then obviously Zach Castillo. So got me to where I am today and really excited to be in a position to where I'm helping a lot of agents across San Antonio and been blessed to actually talk to and coach some agents across the country.
So what actually made you get into real estate after college? Like, was it just random? Did you happen to want to be in real estate? Was that your goal?
Yeah, it's a good question. So actually it was not the goal. Real estate was always fun for me as a thought. But I never really knew the nuances of the real estate world. I thought commissions and being full commission, I did know that part was a little scary.
It was.
And then also coming from an educated background. So my parents were principals, and my sister is a coach and teacher. She's head softball coach at Marshall High School. So go Rams. But she, growing up in a household with educators, you're kind of influenced to go that route. So I went to the College of Education at UT.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So the number 1 college of education in the country, had a great education. And I graduated actually in December, of 2016, which I believe if it wasn't for that, I probably wouldn't be in real estate because it's a little tough to find a teaching and coaching gig midway through the year. So understanding that, I actually went to this, I got asked to go and eat with one of my friends from Clark High School, which I went right up here, right here to this taqueria. And the funny thing was, he brought along another friend that was in the real estate world and was like, "Hey man, you seem like you, would maybe excel in real estate. Why don't you come and shadow?" And I did. And ever since then I was taken away.
Fell in love.
Yeah. So it's pretty cool.
Right?
Yeah.
Now you hate it, right? I'm just kidding. It's the best thing that ever could have happened.
So I guess the hard part for me is like you go from, obviously your ambition wasn't in real estate. It was in teaching and coaching. My wife, she's a teacher. But you get into the real estate side and you go from a high producing agent to this consulting role. So your target is teams and businesses, teams and solo agents and whatnot. But why not continue to produce? Why go in that consulting role?
Yeah.
From the producing side?
Well, good question. And I was thinking about this today. Actually, I was thinking about, and I know we're about to dive into sports, but I was literally thinking about this analogy. And I'm going to bring up Texas because I went to UT. I'm a Texas guy, Texas Longhorns. There was a period where a lot of people said it wasn't a talent problem. It was a development problem.
100%.
And I thought about that in real estate. There's a lot of teams out there, a lot of individuals who have talent, but unfortunately they get out of the business. They have a hard time, keeping agents or maybe staying successful at a high level because unfortunately they fall off on the development side.
Yeah.
And having a knack for education and coaching and teaching and consulting, I always felt like, there's a big drop off in the real estate game because so many agents are just going. They don't really think about the fundamentals. And I knew really early on getting into the inside sales agent world was just completely different worlds in regards to real estate, but really excelling at something that not a lot of people really wanted to tackle. There was a gap of, hey, not a lot of people are excelling at this. So I know that if I can make myself really marketable and really make a lot of money as a result. And then obviously opportunities came from that. So I felt like since there was a gap in that development side, really mastering my craft, I could help others. And that's a big purpose. And not to be cheesy or anything, but I do want to help others. I do want to give back. I don't just see things for myself. I do like seeing others win and achieve more and things like that and reach their full potential. So speaking of Texas Longhorns too, I felt like that's where we were lacking a lot of thinking about real estate and how that translates. I think a lot of people probably can speak to that of like, man, I just needed a little bit more development. I needed a little bit more training. We hear that all the time. So being in a position where I can help give back and be that extra set of eyes and ears for people is really something I thrive on.
Well, I think you look at the development side. It's funny that you mentioned that because I think that feeds into so much that's going on in the real estate world.
Yeah.
I think you look at it and we're going to talk about a lot of things that actually apply to that today. You look at just in general, our industry as a whole. Obviously, it's very, very badly misunderstood.
Right.
And we're going to get into some of that too. But the development, like that is something that when I got into this business, 2017, the same, April of 2017, I think is when I got licensed.
Dang.
So, damn, I'm coming to my 7th year this month.
I didn't know. I got mine in December 16. Same as him.
Yeah.
I got mine December 27, 2016.
Oh, wow.
Well, that's when I was getting into the thought of that. Yeah. So it was a little.
Oh, you didn't have your license yet?
No, not in December.
Oh, okay. So I had mine.
So you had yours.
You've been an agent longer than me, Carly.
I know. But I was part-time for a while. My first 3 or 4
Well,
years.
yeah. And so that's what I'm talking about is part-time agents in the development side.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know what I was doing at all.
I feel like there is a lot of part-time agents, and that creates a lot of problems within the industry.
Oh, yeah.
But I think in general, the development, the lack of, which is why I've always, I get asked all the time, why are you on the team? Why am I on the team? Obviously, there's a different dynamic as to why I'm on
on the team.
Development side.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Straight up. So when I got into the business, I already had the background. So the talent, so to speak. I knew how to sell. I knew how to communicate. I knew how to talk to people. I didn't know shit about real estate.
Okay.
But I was learning. But I'm a doer, so I have to do something to learn it.
Same.
I can't just read a book and be like, oh yeah, like I don't read books. Like I can read.
You learn the most
Promise.
when you fuck up doing it. I'm the same way.
Learn from my mistakes. So, but the development side,
Yeah.
going through it with Shane and Clint, going through it with Leah, going through it with Trang and even Tripsy back then, and another agent on the team, it was learning how to be an agent.
Right.
And I think the development side is so lacking in this industry. I think when you look just in general of every failure that you see on a contract, every failure that you see throughout the process of a realtor is not take a picture and put a sign in the yard.
Yep.
And I had a guy call me out for that the other day, a friend of mine. So I thought, saying, well, you just take a picture and put it on MLS and put a sign in the front yard. And this is a guy that owns 5 houses that he rents them out. And there was an argument over the Zillow article about you have to make $100,000 to own a house or some crap like that.
Right.
And I was like, if you had any idea, but they don't.
No.
Because, and even they don't know, because they came into the business when it was super popping. They've had no development. They just put it in a contract and they walk away.
Yep.
And that's where contracts go bad. That's where people get hurt, lose money, the development side. So it's cool. That's your focus, because when the guys talked about bringing you on, we started talking about this consulting, and you and I sat down and talked about it. I was like, that is something this team is so desperately in need of, not because we have a lack of training, because we're not talking about training. We're talking about developing you as a communicator,
right?
Individual agents, talking about developing you as a lead generator, as someone that can nurture a lead.
Right.
So it was really important. I think that was something that we really missed as a team that we needed to really focus on. So what do you work with, just the Neil and Neil team, or do you kind of?
Yeah, so touched on it a little bit earlier in regards to it's not just the Neil and Neil team. Obviously, this is a huge. I mean, it's amazing. It's awesome. It's exciting. no limit, right, to the possibilities with the Nil Nil team. But beyond that, I've been blessed, just word of mouth, people understanding, working with me, saying, "Hey, man, this guy, get in touch with him. He's going to help you coach, where you're lacking." Because, when thinking about it, and we all know smaller teams across the city, you probably come across other people in the industry across the country that when you're in production, right? It's one thing to where you're like, "Hey, I don't have time to bring on another agent and help them talk to leads." And not just talk to leads, but also convert leads. What is that? There's a big difference, right? People can talk to people, but also when you have that sales volume, right? And you're saying, "Hey, I need to now sell them to connect with me, right? To take the next steps in the journey." That's a big difference. So really excited about that. I don't just work with the Neil O'Neill team. I'm blessed to work with a couple other, agents across San Antonio. I have one out in the Northeast in Massachusetts, worked with a couple in Colorado. So I'm really excited. Elizabeth Curry was my coach for a while. Before that, Anna Kruger, she's head maps coach for inside sales for KW. And, Elizabeth Curry is now CEO of a huge team that's across the country. So she used to be maps coaching as well, head coach. So shout out to them. They got me where I am today. So yeah. And I want to not just language of sales and not just conversation, but also database management. Really doesn't get talked about a lot. I know Carlos does a really good job of that, but understanding too, hey, when I get a lead, Ryan, you taught me how to talk to them. I gained some yardage, what we call it. They're not quite ready to transact or show homes yet, but now what do I do? What does that follow-up procedure look like? Where do I manage it? What category is it? What drip campaign? What do I do to follow up with them? And then how do I make my life easier? And I talk about it, and we're CBC goers. And for those of you, shout out CBC, fantastic church. Yeah. Pastor Ed was talking about, he used an analogy around Easter this time. And he said, he asked the crowd, he said, "Who here has flown standby?" And I literally wrote, "I've flown standby." Actually,
I won't even wait for a meal. You think I'm going to wait for a flight?
No, it's crazy.
So I flew standby one time when I was in the military. I was trying to go on leave.
Oh, man.
And one of my friends said, like, "Oh yeah, my mom works for Southwest. Just go on standby."
That's how I was.
And I went leave. We don't get that long period of time. I had to wait 3 days before I could even leave, and
burned up all your leave on standby.
Burned up all my leave. I got to go home for like 2 days and came back. It was horrible. I would never fly standby.
Yeah, one and done for me too. That's how I went on my 21st trip to Vegas, was standby. I was just like, I need to save all my money to go to Vegas. Oh, that was good. But he asked that, and a couple of people will probably raise their hands. I myself was one of them, and he said, what did it feel like? And obviously you have a stress, right? There's like I don't know when my time is. I don't know when. And then he said, well, how did it feel when you had a ticket? Obviously there's a comfort around that. There's a confidence around that. And I thought about that. And I was like, oh my God, there's probably so many agents right now that have that standby feeling, right?
Oh yeah.
What am I going to stick in this industry?
Yeah,
what's going on? Like, they're feeling that stress because they don't know if it's the long-term the game. They don't know how long they're going to be in this industry. And unfortunately, right, they don't have the tools. They don't have the resources. And some of them do, right? But some of them don't. And so that's where I'm really excited to be in a position to help, especially with the Neil and Neil team, specifically where there's a lot of agents who come on and we don't feel that way, right?
Yeah.
And so having database management best practices, obviously talking about conversation, language of sales practices, and then kind of mixing it all together and really learning from one another. You don't have that feeling anymore. And that's what we want to create. We want to feel like, hey, this is my career. I'm all in. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. So that's the exciting part.
And really, at the end of the day, people are going to buy, sell, invest in real estate for the rest of
with or without time.
Right.
So developing our skills to be the one they choose to buy, sell, invest in real estate is what we need. Again, people over the last 3 years, you could literally not even have a brain and show one person on Zillow a house and go under contract.
Right.
And now you might have to build a relationship with that person for 6 months.
Right.
Like you said, build that database, build that pipeline, and these people are eventually going to call you when they're ready to make a move.
It's just, it's a cat and mouse game. You look at a lot of the problems we have in the industry. I think it comes from two classes of people. I think it's the people that came into the business 2-3 years ago when everything was great. They don't know what this market is like.
Yeah.
We know what this market is like. We've been in the business for 6, 7, 8, 9 years.
Normal market.
So when I came into the business, it was just like this.
Right.
Average days on market was 60 to 70 days. If you price it really good,
Even
Still
longer.
have multiple offers in 70 days.
and it's
90 days on
insane
market.
because 73 days in, you have no showings. All of a sudden, you have 3 showings and 3 offers. You're like, but that's normal market was.
Yeah.
But then it's the old school, the super old agents, not old as in age necessarily, but most of them are, that think they know everything.
Oh yeah.
And they want to push a certain way to do things on you. And that's what I think I get more frustrated there. Cause like, and both of you know me, like I don't get involved too much on the team stuff, like in terms of like coaching and like the mentorship programs like that. Cause I'm super busy doing other stuff, but there's one thing that I will get involved. And that's if somebody's trying to bully one of our agents,
right?
A broker or someone that's been in the business for a long time, going after one of our agents. And I'm typically the first one that gets called from the agent when this happens. And that's the people that think we have a big problem with this industry too. And it goes with development. They were a certain way. Times have changed. Things have shifted.
They have
they have not. And they need to move on to what we see now, which is where it goes into mentorship and coaching. And I've always said, and I am the antithesis of a coached agent. Is that the right phrase? I'm not
saying right now.
I'm not sure that I use that word contextually accurate. I'm not a coaching person. Like I don't do coaching. Quite frankly, I don't even believe in it in a certain sense. In terms of an agent, I don't believe agents should get real estate coaches. I think they should get business coaches because being an agent is a business. And if you're real estate coaching, I feel like real estate coaches are only doing it because they're not producing anymore. If you're not producing, how can you be an accurate coach?
Right.
And a lot of people don't view it the same way as me. I've done the Dave Ramsey stuff. Obviously, I was one of the top agents for Dave Ramsey's endorsed local provider program. I did John Maxwell when I worked for another company and went through his entire program, went to Harrisburg, went to Mechanicsburg, did the whole thing, was Maxwell certified, whatever. The problem I have with coaching versus mentorship is I don't want to tell you how to do your job. I want to show you how I do mine as a mentor and let you modify it to fit you.
Right.
And I think that is where the mentorship side, and you and I have talked about this, I had long conversations about this, where I think, and you and I have as well.
Yeah.
I think you even dropped a coaching program.
I was going to say their name, but a big name coach. I was in them for about a year. And I mean, they were just telling me like, hey, did you make your calls today? Hey, did you pretty much just holding my hand, keeping me accountable, which is not bad, but they were not providing me any skills like kind of like what Ryan does is like, all right, so this is actually how you talk to a client. This is how you communicate. This is how you rebuttal. This is how you use like repeat and affirm, stuff like that. I got none of that. And I spent bukus about $15,000 a year to try to learn, to try to learn this. And all I got from it was something that I could have got from you. Just, hey, did you do your work this week? That's really all I felt like.
What did I tell you the day that I walked in your office and you're doing that?
I could use that money to market myself.
But I say it all the time, but nobody can hold you accountable better than yourself. Yeah. I don't care how many coaches you have. I've never had a real estate coach ever. I work my ass off, but I had mentors. I have mentors that are on the team in Shane and Clint, even my nemesis, Kendall, as a mentor. I lean on them for questions. They lean on me for questions. Yeah. It is what it is. But I don't want to be coached because I want to form my own path. And I want to do it my way. And I know that my way works. And I think if you take like what Ryan does and you do as a mentor, look, we're going to figure out how to take what you do best and create your path, create your own way. Yeah. And that's where I wanted you to talk more about the differences of mentorship versus coaching. Yeah. And what that looks like.
Yeah. So you brought up a couple great points and I want to touch on too. So I was always told, this, and, the very beginning, when you're this, you're like, what's the difference between coaching and teaching? I don't get it, And so, lo and behold, my relative, who I think highly of, Elizabeth, told me, she was like, no, you're not the first person to have thought that. I was thinking the same way. Like, what's the difference? I don't get it. Like, are you coaching people or are you teaching people or training people? So, Gary Keller says it himself. Coaching is basically teaching people how to think, right? And think through their problems rather than telling them what to do, basically. Right. And so when you're thinking about that, of course, we have all fall victim to. There are times where, hey, I'm literally going to have to tell you, you have to do this. But when it comes to really the way I'm going about right? These coaching and consulting moments, these training moments, and you guys have been in the room with me, is I'm going to tell you the direction you need to go, just like with any GPS. And I love analogies, the direction you need to go, right? Except for Carlos, CJ, you're going to maybe take a little bit of a different route to get there, but at least you know the direction you need to go.
That's right.
Now, you guys, and we're all in this room, we probably are going to know the little bit more efficient way to get there rather than the hardest way to get there. And that's all that is following the journey of, hey, I know the direction I need to go. I get the gist of it, right? And especially when you're talking about an example of a conversation, a lot of people realize, okay, well, I mean, yeah, if I want to do business, I got to book an appointment. They get that destination. Now through, coaching and training with me, I'm going to help you get there as efficiently as possible, but you're going to sound differently than me. I don't want you to sound the same as me, right? But you're going to at least know some great techniques to how to get there a little bit more efficiently, but be you. Right.
Yeah,
and at the end of the day, that's the main thing.
At the 100%, like even with all the training and all that stuff, I try to be not myself, and it really didn't go anywhere. That's why I dropped the program, because I felt like all I'm trying to do is read the script, and I was trying to do it verbatim, and it didn't work. But when I took I did take some of the scripting, stuff like that, internalize it and make it my own, just like what you're saying. It didn't work. So that type of stuff works.
That is it. Huh? So I worked with Alexis when she first got onto the team. I actually tried to, your fiance, tried to recruit her onto the team a while back. Didn't work out. She ended up joining the team. And the biggest thing that when she come on the team that I told her, I was like, take all these scripts and throw them away.
Yeah.
Because in my opinion, and Kendall's going to kill me, we have a program called Training where we do all our trainings and we have scripts and stuff like that. But when agents come to me and they say, okay, look, we want to figure out how you do it, CJ. And I'm like, no, you don't. You need to figure out how you do it. What you just said, take the scripts. The scripts are amazing. Like, scripts are great, but you cannot read it verbatim. If it's not you, if it's not you, people are not going to believe you. So I told Alexis, like, you need to make it your own. I have another agent that's new to the team that I'm working with, and Hallie. Yeah. Haley, she's going to carry it too.
Hallie Berry. That's
very different people. But that's the thing about, I see coaching versus mentorship. Right. When you mentor someone, you put them in a direction, you say, make your own way, but you know what direction to go. Right. Take the scripts, internalize them, make them your own. 100%. When you walk into a listing appointment, I hear this all the time when I go to listing appointments. The agent before you brought all this stuff, slideshows, and all. I walk in with very minimal stuff. I'm not even going to share my trade secrets, but I'm very minimal when I walk into a listing appointment. Everything I know is right here. Yeah. I put the data on paper and I tell them what I can do. If you go into a listing appointment with me, you're going to be like, that's the exact scripting presentation that we have in every platform that we train through. But it sounds completely different because it's coming from me. It's my own way of doing it. And I think that's what separates a successful agent from an unsuccessful agent. Mm-hmm. When you look at top producers in general, they can go into a listing appointment, buyer's presentation, whatever, and they can read everything off right off the top of their head. Mm-hmm. Not have to worry about nothing. That shows confidence. It shows you're comfortable. It shows you know what the hell you're doing. But it also shows that you don't need to be over the top. And, I've heard of agents that have they do slideshow presentations on the wall.
Jeez.
And they get
projectors
for what purpose? All you're doing is wasting your client's time, because when you go to an appointment, I hate salesmen. I hate it. I've been in the business for almost 15 years in sales, but I hate salesmen, because if you're trying to sell me something, I already know what I want to buy. I don't need you to sell it to me. I need you to tell me why I want to buy that. Like, what's the difference between that one and that one? You're here for a reason. Tell me what you can do for me. Don't sell me on something. Don't sell me on a house that I'm going to buy anyways, whether it's you or somebody else. Right. Sell me on yourself so I know to use you. And I think that's where agents need to shift gears a little bit. And we're going to talk about some other things that are coming up that needs to be applied moving forward. That's why I like the program that you do. How you handle it is that you basically just, hey, look, here's a direction to go. Figure out a way to do it on your own. I'll help you do that. But at the end of the day, and I think it's helped a lot of agents, just do your thing. Be comfortable in what you're doing. I think confidence is probably the number one key to being successful in this business. And if you walk into a listing presentation or buyers, you're not confident, they're going to be like, no. Right. That's what separates the top producers from lower level agents. What are you seeing from agents? And you work with a variety of different agents. You work with seasoned agents. You work with very inexperienced agents. Yeah. What do you think is the biggest thing that hinders agents right now?
Yeah, well, you touched on it a little bit briefly with the confidence factor. I mean, obviously, the big question is, well, how do I improve my confidence? Well, how do I show up better? How do I, hey, I got an appointment now. What do I do? So confidence is a big thing that we're always, struggling with, especially new agents, especially now that times have changed. You touched on it, and I was saying, man, that's a topic that what you brought up, Carlos and CJ, y'all brought up a great point in regards to what's gotten us to this point where maybe we're having a big shift is also we're dealing with some new agents that came in at a very easy time that got lax. We strayed away from a lot of the fundamentals, and some agents that got in 2021, especially 2022, didn't even know the fundamentals. Didn't even know what I got to lead generate. What is that? How do I talk to people? Language of sales. There's a class for that. They don't know that, and so it's so what you're seeing is the biggest challenge is probably a reassessment of the fundamentals, right? Of what you need to do. And I sent out an email the other day of like, hey, don't forget 5 duties of a real estate agent, right? Scripting and role playing, going on appointments, right? Following up with clients, negotiating, being fiduciary, right? Lead generating, right? I mean, it's simple. It's simple, but it's not easy, right? And that's where a lot of people they think they come into this industry, and the biggest challenge is you see $1 million. I mean, another big challenge. You're seeing things on social media, Netflix. Oh, it's easy,
Selling sunset.
right? So thank you. It's easy. I'm going to make a lot of money. I'm going to be flashy when I do it. But in reality, I mean, we all know that it's very difficult.
It's a
And
grind.
so when you're going and you're saying, hey, my friend who I thought was my friend is telling me you just that's what people think. And that's the biggest challenge. It's not only a challenge internally that a lot of agents are fighting of like a confidence thing of, hey, I'm not sure if I'm doing this right. I need to learn more. How do I gain my confidence? How do I know what I'm doing? But also there's a challenge with a consumer perspective on our industry that we are having to simultaneously combat. So it's two where we're saying, hey, once we get somebody who's confident themselves, now they're able to handle that. But if you got some things going internally with you of like, hey, I don't know what to do. I don't know my basics. What are my fundamentals? What should I be doing every single day? And if it doesn't involve lead generating, you're in trouble. Then you can't even, how are you supposed to handle when a client says, why should I choose you? Right? Don't you just put a sign in the yard? Don't you just put it on the
Same.
yeah, aren't you all the same?
thing.
Oh, you work with Keller. I just talked to a Keller Williams agent. And if you're not able to handle that, you're in trouble.
Yeah. And I think that's a good segue into the perspective of real estate and what agents deal with every day.
Right.
I think people forget that. So the average agent in Texas does less than $4 million volume. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So that's, if you break it down, the average agent makes less money per annum per year, average individual income for the state of Texas.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah.
Like if you're a solo agent, team or not, just individual, you generally on average, an agent makes less money than a normal person that works an 8 to 5 because people don't understand what it costs to be a real estate agent either.
Right. That's true.
They don't understand paying for leads. They don't understand the referral fees, the caps, all of the things that go out.
Yeah.
They just say, okay. And it's our fault. I 100% blame agents for it because of the flashy, the social media, posting pictures of your leased Mercedes Benz, but you live in an apartment that's a 1 bedroom that you pay, $1,800 a month for.
Right. Living in the car.
And I'm not saying that you should own a house to be real estate. I'm just saying like we put out this persona that I'm flashy. I came from an industry where I was very successful when I got into real estate. So it was kind of like, okay, well, I see the selling sunset and the $1 million listing and all this stuff. It's like, you don't realize like as a consumer, you see that and you think, man, all realtors are just making a fortune. No, you go into what a realtor makes and the fees that come with that. And it's like a solo agent, it would cost them roughly 30% of their income, roughly, to be successful.
Yeah. And
that's a hard number. And that's probably one of the reasons why I don't go on my own is that I don't want the extra work and the time. People always put a number on it, but they forget about the time. Like realtors make up, 73% of all volunteer hours across the state of Texas. That means realtors are volunteering at a higher rate than anybody else. Why? Because during the day, we're not working as much because most of our clients are at work. So we can go and volunteer, but they forget about the night times. I bet my first 2-3 years in the business, I worked till 10, 11 o'clock every single night from 6:30 in the morning all the way to 10, 11 o'clock. Yeah. So the time, that's worth something. That's money.
Right.
And so I think agents got into this idea that, I'm going to post it on TikTok or whatever that I'm driving this badass flashy Mercedes. Well, you lease it. You don't even own it.
Tesla.
Or a Tesla. But you earned it. I mean, you worked your ass off
Yeah.
to make some money. So
Took
when
a
you're
while.
dealing with teams versus solo agents, there's not that much difference because you see team agents do it too. But I think one of the reasons why I like the team aspect of it is that we can leverage our time better.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where agents really struggle, their time management. I think that also kills their confidence really badly because they get so stressed out over time management. So when you're dealing with, you obviously you work with solo agents and you work with team agents. What do you see as the biggest difference between solo agents and team agents in terms of trajectory of success?
Yeah, what all trickles down to, and the important question is, what's their financial thermostat? Why are they this too? What's their big why? One solo agent I do very close, for him, and I will tell you, one of the big things when this NAR lawsuit came out, he said, right now to me, I have to watch my dollar line even more now. And when I hear that, it's easy to agree right off the bat. But I challenged him. I shifted his focus because I'm going to tell you, this individual agent is actually thinking about exploring, teams, the nil team, and he's a very successful agent. $10 million producer consistently, and that was his first response. And I said, I challenge you, because gut reaction, I'm like, yeah, no, I get it. It's easy. But in reality, you're thinking to yourself, I think you're actually looking at it this differently. You should be looking at it like, oh, nothing's going to change. I'm going to actually go out and get more market share.
That's how I feel.
Right? I'm actually going to take advantage of this. I'm actually going to double down, right, on the things that I'm already doing, rather than looking at it. And we call this an abundance mindset versus scarcity mindset. And I felt like, as I was talking to him a little bit more about it, he was coming from a scarcity mindset. I have to wait and see what's going to happen. I'm really watching my bottom line, right? I'm really watching every dollar right now. And I'm thinking to myself, ooh, already, if that's your gut reaction, and I know I may be speaking to some people that are listening to this who are maybe along those wavelengths, and it's understandable that they're thinking that way, but I would challenge you to shift focus and say, you know what? I'm actually not worried, and I'm not going to fall victim to this, right? Whatever's going on, any shift that's going on, because we talked about with COVID too, there was the same thing. I'm not sure in reality, you control what you can control, right? You understand that, hey, I'm going to double down not only with my business and what I'm doing, but my skill set, my practices. Let me go out and take market share, because there are a lot of agents right now that are going to get out. And so I was thinking about that. I was thinking, man, it's worrisome that people have that and they've already been some successful. And I'm just thinking to myself, it's fun when we see some agents who are newer, who are like, oh, I don't care. Like they don't even know better, right? Yeah. And sometimes it's even better that way. They don't have any memory of things or fear. They're just going, and that's what's exciting. And if they are experienced, reminding them, hey, control what you control. Don't look at it from a scarcity mindset. Come from the abundance mindset, and really work on your craft and take advantage. And so I know these are some things that we're going to talk about, but man, it's really important for sure. And that's the biggest thing, I think, coming from a bottom line. And then also too, some business owners are probably listening to this and thinking, well, Ryan, you haven't said working on the business versus working in the business. Mm-hmm. Individual agents constantly working, in the business to where they really can't build systems, processes, procedures, right? To really allow themselves to work on the business, because they're just in it so much. They're going out on showings. They're not leveraging their time. And that's a big challenge.
Yeah, I think you touched on the NAR lawsuit. We're going to talk about that a little bit. I've been avoiding the topic, but it's time we have a conversation about it.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to impact the new agents that are coming into the business, because they don't know. They have no knowledge of what is really going on, nor do they have any knowledge of what it takes to be successful or even a high producing agent. And I think when I look at it, I had a conversation with an agent the other day, a newer agent that's on the team, and she was concerned. I'm not writing any contracts. So I'm like, this is cyclical. You have a really big month and a fall off, and you're like, oh my God,
yeah,
I'm not.
What do I do?
I had a slow month last month too. But I'm used to this. I've already been through this. So I knew, okay, hey, it's going to be fine.
Next month's going to be 10 times.
Yeah. I mean, I dropped 3 or 4 contracts this week. I got 2 or 3 more coming in. It's like, it's just the way it goes. Yeah. And agents have to understand, you can't stop doing what you're supposed to be doing just because you're scared. The NAR lawsuit, everything that's involved in just real estate. This NAR lawsuit doesn't change anything. Matter of fact, to me, it reinforces what you need to be doing. It just says, okay, now you need to shift your focus from like you said, the scarcity mindset to like, okay, what did I do that made me so successful when I was successful? Continue to do that,
Right.
because at some point it's going to come back around.
Right.
And, investing in your community, investing in different, opportunities to, like we talked about, the money that you spend on coaching.
Yeah.
Well, if you shift that money to other programs, like, and it's little stuff like I do the stock show auction in Lavernia, and that generates business, but it also helps people.
Right.
And if you take that money and you apply it towards something that's going to help people, they're going to come back to you and say, man, I remember that guy or that girl that said, hey, let me help you out now. Even though you're not a consumer, you're not trying to buy a house, but you helped me out. Now it's time. You're the person I want to go with. And no coaching program is going to give you that.
Yeah.
And so I think it goes back to coaching versus mentorship. So for new agents coming into the business, knowing what you know in the scarcity, the abundance side of it, what kind of would you give new agents coming into the business, whether solo or on a team? What would you tell them?
Yeah, I would say don't stray away from the fundamentals. And so if you're asking, well, what are the fundamentals? Obviously, like I mentioned, lead generate, script and role play, right? Understand a follow-up game, really practice your craft to be able to convert, find a mentor, right? I'm telling you, it's not ask for help. That's for sure. If anything, we want to seek advice, seek help, learn from one another, get in an environment where you're learning and collaborating, but also understand there's a fine line between doing too much of that. It's not too one thing to be in this industry. And I see people at trainings all the time, and it's like, oh my goodness, like maybe you're doing this now because you don't have business, but it's like, okay, get to know what works for you, what your niche is too. We talk about it, on the Neil and Neil team, finding your pillars of business. And obviously your number one foundation should be sphere of influence, right? Your friends and family. I know you're big at that. And I know, Carlos, you've been working really hard on that too. And then what are your two other ones, right? What are your two other pillars that you're really going to pour into? And so understanding you need to find a mentor, don't stray away from the fundamentals, and really identify what a clear pillars of business are and really execute on that. I mean, what would you say too?
So the riches are in the niches.
Yeah.
Right. Like I was the type of agent. I had literally had shiny object syndrome for the longest time.
Yeah.
I know CJ knows this. I was just trying that easy button.
Yeah.
I was trying to jump in. I'm very competitive. I'll be straight up very competitive. And I come on the team. I see CJ doing freaking, I think the first year I was on the team, did like 80 deals. I don't know, 70, 80 deals.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I want to be there next year, but I want to jump from no deals to 80 deals. It's just not going to happen. Now, doing a good amount of deals is great. Like on my first year on my team, I had 25 deals. That's not bad for an agent who's kind of just starting out, but you got to take your time, be patient, and really learn, like you said, the fundamentals. If you just try to jump in and say like, I'm going to give it all, and I'm just going to wing it and go in there. Yeah, you're going to eventually get there if you're a hard worker, because they say hard work beats talent any day, but you're going to get there. But if you want to get there, the quickest route, point A to point B, is you got to start with the fundamentals. I agree with you wholeheartedly on that.
Yeah. Consistently do the right thing over and over and over. That's the big thing.
One of the biggest things that I took away from all the different coaches that I had, one of the biggest things I did learn is focus on the process, forget about the results, and it'll just happen. Just do the small things every single day.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing.
That's hard for new agents.
Well, and that's where I think the whole idea of living transactionally, so many agents live transactionally, and it's like, I forget about it. Like, oftentimes I'll have to email Brenda or Amy or somebody, hey, what do I have coming up? Like it's closing.
Right.
Like I forget what I have under contract because I'm so focused on that next step of business, that next listing appointment, that next buyer, whatever, that I kind of forget. Now I'm following it up and I'm communicating with my clients, but like, I don't know the closing dates. Like, hey, what day do I have this? Like, because I can't stand the idea of living transactionally, because I think you'll weigh yourself down. And, I've talked about this before with other brokers, and it's like, you got to be afraid to walk away from a deal that's going to cost you time or cost you another deal. And that's how you get out of that transactional mindset, is that I've got this under contract. We're in a good place. Now I need to keep focusing on how to keep generating that business while also managing the current contract I have. That's where I like the team mindset or aspect of it, where you have the transaction coordinators that are helping you manage that behind the scenes. And, and I've got a great one. I've worked with some of the best transaction coordinators I could probably ever have. And it helps to have that leverage so that you can focus on growing that business. And I think being on a team does, I think, help you get out of that transactional mindset to a certain aspect. And I think once agents learn to stop living transactionally, they can start focusing on their business even more so to grow that business. And that's something that I learned very early in the sales career, 15 years ago, is that the deal that you've already got, it's there. You manage it correctly, you're going to be fine. You need to keep focusing on, what is it, 3 to 6 months from now?
Oh yeah.
Everything I do today is for 3 to 6 months from now.
100%.
And so when you get out of that transactional mindset, you're going to see your success go to another level, in my opinion. And I think value of leadership matters too. And I think that's something that agents lack massively, because I got to be careful what I say here. You get on the broker level, a broker, Keller Williams, JB Goodman, whoever, they have so many agents. There's only so much time the broker can spend with you. So finding that mentor or that leader that you can lean on, and you mentioned it, even using other agents. I don't consider myself a mentor. I'm an open book to any agent on the team. I've got agents that aren't even in our brokerage that call me all the time. Mm-hmm. But just being able to learn from each other, because again, on the job training is better because you're learning firsthand experience what agents are going through. And when that rises for yourself, you're going to say, oh, I remember when Ryan was this exact same situation. I'm going to call him. How did you handle this? How did you get through it? Or even if you didn't get through it, what did you learn from that? You see that a lot on your side, right?
Right. 100%. The more you talk about it too, I think, and everybody's talked about it, the dynamic of real estate is changing. The days of you saying, hey, I'm just going to do it on my own and not really having support. I do believe, and I'll go out on a limb, and I know a lot of other industry people who are, higher places than me have said it, that it's leaning towards teams and brokerages that operate like teams, just because of the systems they have, the structure, the support, and honestly, the market share that they have to funnel leads right towards these avenues. So, when you're thinking about it, advice to new agents that are looking for mentorship, looking for guidance. There are times too, and we have to say this, and you guys would agree, and I've myself struggled with this. You have to put your ego aside.
Oh yeah.
I mean, man, that's a big challenge. For any new agent out there that's thinking, well, I can do it on my own, or let me try it. I love that. And all praise to you if you want to do that. But I will tell you, there's no shame in going and seeking advice or seeking a team that's going to help you. You can build up your brand. And what's most important? That's a great coaching question. What's most important to you, right? Having your name on the for sale sign, or actually making a life worth living, right?
Yeah, or closing a transaction. Yeah, and exactly. I think that's, I have a brand that I've built. I've worked my ass off to build it up, and I've got a pretty good brand. But at the end of the day, my name's not on any signs.
Yeah.
I've got signs that I've, put out for marketing purposes at baseball fields like that. But when a listing goes live, that sign doesn't have my name on it. But that client knows who I am.
Right.
That's what matters to me. They know who I am. They know I'm going to get the job done. And agents across the industry know who I am. And they know that when they work with me, I'm going to try and make this as smooth as possible. And that helps you in your business too, because agents want to work with you. Yep. They're going to call you and say, I had an agent call the other day. Hey, can you give me a list of all your listings so I can see if there's anything on there that fits my client's needs? Because they know that when they go under contract with me, I'm going to do my job. Obviously, my fiduciary belongs to my client. I'm going to take care of my client. But I know that if I want to keep having people bring me business or bring me buyers to my listings, I've got to have a good reputation. Right. There are agents in this industry that when I see their name on a listing, I'm like, oh God, I got to do this again. And again, the client wants the house, but going in, your perspective on that agent changes. Like, okay, I know that I better have everything covered because something's going to get screwed up. And I don't want it to hurt my client.
Right.
And it's the nature of the business. And I think the leadership side of it is why it's like that. I think now that people are shifting more towards teams, we have a hell of a leadership team on this, right, in this team. And you got seasoned agents that are leaders. You've got unseasoned agents that are taking the reins and running accountability groups. And I don't look at accountability groups the same way as I look at coaching. I like the idea of accountability groups in the essence of you're working together, leaning on each other, running ideas. But again, if you're afraid to hold yourself accountable, it doesn't mean shit. It means jack squat. And so the team aspect does boost that. It helps you gives you the time to really hold yourself accountable and also be able to bounce things off other people. Hey, I'm working with this agent on this. What's your experience with this agent? Well, some things you need to look for. Right. These are things that they typically miss, or, hey, just, these are the situations I ran into on this contract that I had, agent called me about a lender, and we can bounce that off of people too. So it gives you a heads up, and it also helps you, use that language to coach your clients.
Yeah.
You know, if your client comes to you and they have a certain lender and you're like, all right, look, here's my experiences with this lender. And also this other agent that I worked with in the past had this experience with this lender. Let's maybe look at another lender for you that might be a better fit. You know, when I look at builders, when I bring a client to a builder, I'm interviewing the client and the builder at the same time to make sure their personalities match.
Right.
So I'll put 3 or 4 builders in front of a client and I'll point that client, look, this builder is more like this, but you need someone more like this. Let's look at this builder a little harder. And it really kind of sets up how your transaction is going to go. Same thing with a lender, same thing with an agent. You're selling yourself to that client and you're showing that value. One of the topics that we wanted to get into was the NAR lawsuit. And we're going to touch on that here in a little bit in pretty solid depth and what we could potentially see as we grow into this new landscape. But I wanted to get into, there's a big thing coming up next week, this solar eclipse.
Yeah.
And it's a big thing where real estate agents are like, they're lining up to go see this thing. Everybody's lining up to go see this
It's a
thing.
holiday.
Schools are off.
It's crazy. It's crazy how they're shutting everything down. There's supposed to be over 500,000 people going to Kerrville. I don't know if you know that. It's the #1 destination in Texas. for people to
Elon
watch solar
Musk,
eclipse. Medeva's gonna be
Beyonce.
packed.
Yeah.
You gotta be kidding me.
No,
Yeah.
they're all going to be right there in Kerrville. So Amy's going to be
Yeah.
selling some real estate over there to Elon Musk.
Well, y'all can go to Kerrville and I'll just take all y'all's leads because I'm not going to be part of this stupid solar.
People are not going to be looking because they're going to be think it's nighttime for those 2 minutes that the solar eclipse.
So, but it's only staying in one path, right?
Yeah. One path across like entirely like
So
the-
essentially, yeah, it's going to go through Mexico, come up like I think it's like 15 states, straight up to the middle.
yeah,
It's
all
gonna
the way
last-
through. I saw through Maine and then up into.
I hope it's cloudy as hell.
That it's supposed to be.
It's supposed
to be a little cloudy.
Oh, it's
Don't
cloudy as hell.
rain on everybody's party.
Oh my!
Come on, it's
But,
a cool event. Last time it happened, I saw a statistic in San Antonio, 1397, I believe.
That's the last time it
1397.
happened?
I thought this happens like
This
every
was-
46
this was
years or
a
something.
different,
No.
different.
So this one is the entire sun will be covered.
a full.
Right, sun.
Yeah, the sun will be covered. It'll be completely dark.
Like for example, in October, it was like a quarter of the sun. Like this one's completely dark.
Yeah.
That's why it's such a big deal. It happens once every 1,000 years or something like that.
No, because I heard it's going to happen again in like 2046.
It will happen again. I heard that. Yes, in 20. Yes, I think another.
We'll be alive then too.
Be
Well,
alive.
maybe.
I don't know.
I don't even think this is what.
We'll see what happens
Wow.
after this one.
Yeah.
But
Are y'all going to the ranch?
probably. I
Yeah.
think so. Are you going?
Lexi and I will
No.
go.
I'm
You're
absolutely
going?
not going.
Lexi and I will go. Yeah.
No.
Why aren't
I'm
you going?
Why? First of all, I can't go to that ranch sober. I mean, you got to drive home.
Yeah.
Who said?
Yeah, no,
DD.
that's. I'm out on that, but I know I got a lot of clients. I got a big listing that's like right in the middle of it. And they're wanting to like sell. So you drive by and you see people like, oh yeah, Eclipse parking here, and they're like charging
Yeah, I
like
know,
$50
right?
a head. I'm like, and people are paying it.
Are they? Oh.
Like, oh, see, I bet you.
Out in Kerrville, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh.
actually, I think that's what Elon Musk and Beyonce did. They rented a spot in the like a parking lot in
Really?
Kerrville.
Yeah, I remember. hearing that.
30K, something like that.
That's,
But the cool thing about it, it's bringing
Supposedly.
people together. That's one thing is like you're not seeing people fight, all this stuff. It's something that, even though it's, in my opinion, kind of stupid, I don't really care about the eclipse. It's like bringing everybody's talking about it, nobody's fighting. Like even with the politics, all that stuff's going on. It is bringing people together. That's one thing that I do.
I mean, I guess that's a positive aspect of it. I know we had
I'm
thought
all
it, but Brittany's got to work and I got to work. Someone's got to hold it down while y'all are out.
Oh, so they're having school
Yeah.
out there?
Oh yeah, we don't. I mean, even during COVID, it was like I think we shut down school for a couple of months, and it's like, no, we're going back. Like I live in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
We don't fall in line.
They
with
didn't even
that.
hear about COVID until like 2 years later.
Like, well, what? Like, oh, you got a cough? I'm just joking. I'm just, it was worse than that. But anyways, so yeah, it's a big deal. I want to kind of circle back. The solar eclipse thing was a big talking point, so I wanted to kind of lighten the mood a little bit. But we're going to dig into. I want to dig into this NAR lawsuit. And for a lot of y'all that hear about this, obviously there's a ton of misinformation out there. And nobody really knows what's going on because you see what the news says, you see what social media says. Of course, you got, TikTokers and all these people like, oh, the days of realtors are over. First of all, bullshit. That's not happening. But
They've been saying that for like 10 years.
yeah. And so that kind of goes back to what, I want people to understand what realtors do, the work that we put in. And how this is going to impact new agents and young, like low producing agents, or this is hurt them more than it's going to hurt top producers.
Right.
Boy, that was loud. What is your take on the consulting side? Because you all on the training side,
Right.
the mentorship side, because you're talking to agents that I'm guaranteeing are asking you hella questions about this. What's your take? And then I'll give you my take.
Yeah. So just to answer your point blank, just to be completely honest, my take is really, I'm not scared. I'm not worried. I don't think much is really going to change. I think back when COVID happened, I think that was very like, "Ooh, what's happening? This is weird. This
I
is
mean, that's how Shift
unusual,"
Talk got started.
right? Yeah. And as you can see, great things happen from it. We actually thrived in that. And I think for this, looking at it and understanding, okay, yeah, it's a little bit of a different dynamic. Of course, there's some conversations that probably should have already been happening that are probably going to be at the forefront now. Just understanding that and saying, hey, we need to handle that a little bit more appropriately, and realizing that, hey, this is probably going to be a conversation that's now not going to be towards the end of maybe a real estate call, a real estate strategy session, a listing consultation. It may be something that you may get, right off the bat. And I want to say, we're blessed to be in a great state. Really not much has changed. A lot of the verbiage that we've already had and everything we've had has already kind of identified a lot of stuff. So I do want to stress everybody that I've been talking to, it's not panic mode. It's nothing like that. It's in reality, and Amy Patrick, a fantastic agent on the Neil and Neil team, said on one of our, coaching calls, basically our trainings, was like, I actually think this is really good. Because I'm thinking, and she said, I'm thinking that it's actually going to force us to be even better.
Yeah, 100%.
Right. Explaining a lot of some of these tough conversations about compensation and everything like that. So, and also truly identifying and your value that you provide and how to articulate it to your clients to be able for the consumer to say, you know what? I actually didn't know what you did, but now that you're explaining it in that way, yeah, for sure. I mean, it makes sense to pay you, or yeah, I definitely want to make sure you're compensated, or yeah, it actually makes sense if I'm listing my home for sale that I would offer, right, to pay somebody who brings us a buyer. And Shane, Shane Neal brought up an analogy, and I love my analogy.
Never that guy.
If you guys were selling a home, and if somebody brought this up, and I love this take, how I would explain it to them with this is one example. I'd say, awesome. So I know you mentioned you had some questions about compensation, and what I always like to do is I like to walk through my sellers an example, an analogy of how we should look at it. And so, for instance, Chris, if we marketed your home and we listed it for sale, if we want to gain the most traction, because you would agree, most traction, we're probably going to get the most activity, most chances for an offer, especially top dollar, what you're wanting. Now, if we said, hey, we're going to list your home for sale and we're going to charge people to come to your house, do you think we'd get a lot of traction if we had to charge them to go and see your house? No, probably not, right? Now, what if we actually paid clients to come in and view your home? Do you think there would be a lot more traction? Now, how about this, right? Yeah, for sure. Now, what if we only had to pay the one person who brought us the buyer that wants your home? You would agree that that would be appealing. Perfect. Well, I'm so glad that we're on the same page with that, because that's ultimately what we're going to be doing moving forward. And that's what I would advise us to do moving forward, to ultimately create the most traction for your home. That's going to result in us getting the best opportunity to get the offer you're wanting. So I'm glad we're on the same page. And that's what I would call, in coaching moment, leveling the playing field, to say we are agreeing. And it's just like working with a for sale by owner. When you say, oh, they're open to, so you're open to working with an agent, you're leveling the playing field to get in a mutual agreement that, hey, a big factor, and it's a huge step of, you understand that paying, right, a buyer's agent that's bringing us a buyer, right, would be appealing. And so when you're able to walk them through, and I think this is really big when we're talking about this, it's going to challenge a lot of agents to be more well-versed on the value they provide, and being able to articulate their value in a way that makes sense, right? And if you can't answer those questions, those tough questions, why should I pay you? Why should I pay them, right? I don't know what you guys do. You're in trouble, right? And so really, I don't think that a lot's going to change. And ultimately too, it does frustrate me that in the meats and bones of all this, this isn't really looking out for the buyer's best interest. This is actually doing the complete opposite. And so I don't know if it's a stab at realtors and trying to think like, hey, we're getting paid too much, but in reality, we're doing a disservice to buyers out there if this does ultimately go through, because my fear is that some buyers who are uneducated, which a lot are, especially first-time home buyers, think, well, maybe I should just call the sign. Maybe I should just work with the listing agent. That's not doing any favor. And that's what we will avoid.
I mean, first of all, dual agency in the state of Texas is illegal anyways.
Right.
So you're going into it unrepresented. So for those of y'all that don't understand what the NAR lawsuit was, essentially sellers in Missouri formed a class action lawsuit saying that realtors weren't being open about compensation,
Right.
and that they didn't feel it was fair to pay buyer's agents. Okay, I got it. I've actually been watching this thing for about 3 years now. And I don't know Missouri's buyer's rep agreements. I don't know their listing agreements. I don't know shit about shit that goes on with that. I can just tell you what I know in Texas. What the unintended consequences, Jeff Garza used this phrase, unintended consequences. And I think this is a perfect way to do it. Unintended consequences are, if this ever turns into something, which I don't think it will, is that buyers will go in unrepresented and they'll be taken advantage of.
Right.
100%.
If I'm representing a seller and you're an unrepresented buyer, good luck. Yeah. Good luck.
Realtors don't even know what's going on. You think the buyer's going to know?
That's exactly right. You don't know how to protect your earnest money. You don't know when to order the inspection. Right. You don't know the timeline with which you have to get it done and negotiate repairs. You don't know repairs you can ask for. Right. You don't know what the VA is going to require. You don't know what FHA is going to require. You don't know what conventional loans are going to require. You don't know your financing period. You don't know when you need to have your appraisal done by, have it back. There's so much that goes into it. It's not just putting a sign in the effing yard. Unintended consequences of your VA and FHA buyers are the ones that get hurt the most, because they are trying to come to the table with as little cash as possible, because they don't have the type of cash that a seller would have having equity. Then what does a seller do? I think Shane may have mentioned this to me in a phone call once. What is the seller going to do when the seller says, I'm not compensating a buyer's agent? Right. Well, that seller's going to be buying a house. Okay, Mr. Seller, are you willing to pay me to represent you to buy this house? Builders are still going to offer to pay buyer's agents. Mm-hmm. They're offering 6-7% sometimes. Right. So I look at it like an FSBO. You know, and I don't remember the exact stats. I had them last week, but I forgot them. But I believe somewhere around 14% of all listed homes last year were listed by FSBOs. Of that 14%, I believe something like 10% of them sold. Of that 10%, I believe there was something like 6 or 7% of them were sold to somebody that seller already knew. It was already a cat in the bag type of thing.
Neighbor, cousin,
right?
Stuff like that.
That leaves roughly 3% that were buyer agent or a person through the listing system. On average, of the 10% that sold, the FSBO made $105,000 less than a standard listing. Well, let's just use the average price point of about $300,000. So $300,000, 3% compensation to the buyer's agent is $9,000. Would you rather make $100,000 less or pay a buyer's agent $9,000 to bring a buyer to your house? Mm-hmm. I think what it's going to come down to is agents are going to put it in their offers and say, I'm going to present this offer. And again, MLS cannot show the compensation as per what they're negotiating the agreement to be right now. What that means is on an MLS listing, it's a multiple listing service. Sabor has ours in San Antonio. Sabor, Four Rivers, stuff like that. Right now, we disclose what the compensation is to a buyer's agent. If that is no longer shown on MLS, which is what they're saying, then that buyer's agent is going into it not knowing if they're going to get paid or not. And they're supposed to have a buyer's representation agreement in place before they can show the property. I think what's going to happen is the buyer's going to submit an offer with their agent, and that offer is going to ask for compensation. And it's going to be up to the seller to say, do I take this offer and compensate the buyer, or do I lose the offer and hope that a buyer comes in that's willing to pay their agent? The chances of that happening are slim and none, because now you're adding $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 to the money out of pocket for a buyer.
Can't afford it.
They can't afford it, because what people don't understand is what buyers come to the table with, even VA buyers. So a VA buyer comes to the table. They say, well, they don't have a down payment. Right. No, but they still got a funding fee, unless they're 30%. They still have a origination fee. They still have inspection. They still have appraisal. Potentially
title policy.
Owner's or lender's title policy. They have closing costs that sometimes exceed what a seller's closing costs are, or are pretty close to it. So now you're going to tack another $9,000 on it, and that pre-approved buyer at $300,000 is now only approved for $250,000, because now they got to come out of pocket cash, which is going to offset their DTI, offset their money to close, and now they can buy lesser. So those $300,000 houses aren't going to sell. I mean, they're going to sell, but
now they're going to sell.
That person's budget is $250,000. So there's unintended consequences on that side. I think all in all, it'll shake things up for about a month, and then sellers are going to start to see the light. And I've had this conversation several times with sellers, and it's one in the and two in the bush type of thing. You know, do you take the offer in hand where you got to compensate the buyer's agent, or do you wait and hope that somebody else comes along? That's just not going to work. Not to mention, Texas is so protective of buyers in a contract. And I pride myself in knowing contracts very, very well. There are no protections for a seller. You're under contract, you're under no outs. Yeah. The buyer has 5 or 6 different outs depending on how you structure the contract. Well, how are listing agents going to handle that on an unrepresented buyer? You have to represent the contract ethically, regardless of your fiduciary. I mean, obviously, fiduciary is number one, which is your responsibility to your client, but you have to represent the contract ethically. Well, I'm writing the contract. I'm writing it ethically because I'm going to follow the letter of the contract, but I'm not going to offer to a buyer because I got to protect my seller.
Right.
I want the chips to lean my seller's
Just go
direction.
ahead and do a 2-day option period.
I mean, and you still hear it now, even with agents are like, oh yeah, it's standard is 10 days at $350. Bullshit. It's not the standard. So it has so many unintended consequences for buyers. It's going to minimize your buyer pool. It's going to reduce budgets. And it's not going to decrease the value of homes. This has no bearing on an appraisal because they're not appraising the house anticipating commission. I don't even know that the appraiser knows what the commission compensation is when they appraise the house. It just minimizes your buyer pool. And I think at the end of the day, when sellers kind of catch on to how this is going to structure, they're going to be like, okay, well, let's just throw the compensation on there. We're going to pay the buyer's agent because at the end of the day, you as the seller bought the house without paying for an agent. So you're essentially paying for the agent out of the equity of the house when you sell it. So you're kind of kicking the can down the road a little bit. And then if you got to buy a house, guess what? You as the buyer would want to find a house that's compensating your agent because you're going to probably want representation. And if you don't, you're going to get into one deal and you're like, oh man, I forgot to order the appraisal on time. Or, hey, when did we order HOA documents? Oh, HOA documents, I have to order those too. Or, it's going to, it's going to snowball into this frenzy. And I think it very quickly is going to turn right back to the standard. And listen, they did this in the 80s and 90s and it didn't work. It created an absolute chaos. It was a big part of why lenders started taking advantage of people. And you saw the crash in 2008 and they changed how the language was for lenders. They had to reduce their costs. That's not what we're going to see here. It's going to actually get more expensive to sell a house. It's going to cost people more money to sell a house because they're going to get less money for their houses by waiting for that right person to come along. And by waiting, what are you doing? You're stacking days on market. And what do they say about days on market? The longer you're on the market, the less you're typically going to get.
What's wrong with that house? That's what they automatically start to think.
Right.
Something's wrong with it. Something's going on. And it's the new thing's going to be not paying a commission. But at the end of the day, we'll see what happens. I don't think anything's going to change either. In my mind, if you're an agent that takes care of your clients and you show your value, even if your buyer has to pay you, I've had so many people like, oh yeah, I want to make sure you're compensated. Like that happens all the time. So I think that the professionals will get paid. The people doing it part-time will be kicked out of business, period.
And you're going to hurt the little guy. That's what's going to hurt ultimately. Because the top producers, the ones that know how to communicate, they know how to negotiate, they're going to still get their business. And this is where, and I want people to understand, like I hear more about lenders talking about this than agents because agents just don't know. I've seen some agents come on the news and explain it really well. And the first response out of everybody is, well, you're realtors. You're just, you're trying to protect yourself. Let me explain something, okay? And this is where I got to make sure people understand. And this goes back to the flashy. Again, your average solo agent, average individual agent, whether on a team or solo by themselves, on average make less money than the standard average income in the state of Texas. And people are like, how? You get a $10,000 check. Let's break that $10,000 check is. Yeah. Okay. So first of all, if you get a lead from a lead platform, which most agents get leads, they buy them or they pay a referral fee for that lead. Right. It's 25 to 30%. So that $10,000 just got shrunk down to $7,000. Well, guess what? If you're part of a brokerage, you're probably going to have some sort of a cap that you have to pay into to keep your license with that. That's typically 20%. Yep. 20, right? That's about right. No, for 20. So now you got 50% of your commission just got reduced. You now got $5,000. Okay. And that 20% doesn't come off every deal. It comes off the first deals till you hit that cap. Well, let's just say you haven't hit your cap. So now that $10,000 went to $5,000. Okay. Now there's splits. Yeah. Because you're going to have an 80-20 split, 70-30 split, 64, whatever that split is. Well, now that, let's just say 80-20. So now you just lost another 20%. So that 20% is off of the top, not the $5,000 is less. So now you're at somewhere around $3,000. That $10,000 just turned into $3,000. And most agents do about a deal a month. Yeah. That's $3,000 before taxes. Yeah. You still got to account for your taxes. That's why I'm saying, like, you think that agents just make all this money. Your top producers do. Yeah, we can make a good living, but we work our asses off to get there. And we have to do a lot of deals to make a good living.
And what you said is still not counting what we pay for marketing, what we pay for selling our clients' homes. There's a lot that goes into
A photo package is $400 to $500. A good photo package, a really good one, could be $700 to $1,000. Signs are, $60, $70 a pop, and you're forgetting the time.
Right.
I like to say, I make an hourly wage of a certain amount. So if I can take 1 hour and not do something, that saves me a certain amount of money. And we've got runners that run our signs. That saves me time. That's more time that I can spend with my clients.
How much you work for an hour?
I'm not going to say that. But you just made $10,000. No, that agent really only made about $3,000 before you account for taxes and all the money they spent to market that house. That's why the business is a volume play. And so when next time you see an agent, you think, okay, well, that agent's just making all this money. They're not. Like, it takes, I did the math. For an agent to make $100,000, they have to do somewhere around like 30 deals a year. Did anybody understand how hard that is? 30 deals a year.
Average in the United States is maybe around 8, 7.
I think it's between 8 and 11 deals.
Yeah, 8 and 11, yeah.
And so your price points change that,
Yeah,
obviously. So if you go, that $300,000 house turns into a $600,000 house. Yeah, you made $6,000. That's the average. Everybody. I mean, most agents don't make that much money. That's why you see a lot of agents that don't own homes. And you're like, how are you in real estate and you don't own a home? Can't afford to buy one.
Yeah.
It's the reality of it. And guess what? You're going to have months where you don't get paid.
Right.
Like no other industry,
for that, yeah.
no other world do you do all the work up front and hope that you're going to get paid. Construction, there's deposits, there's draws, but you're hoping that if it doesn't close, you're not getting paid. So you spend all this time and you have a listing agreement that's only, 6 months. If that listing doesn't sell, you just spent $1,000 on pictures and drones or whatever. You did signage, you did time, the time that you spent working with the client, and you don't sell it, and you're out that money.
Wasted time.
100%. So
waste time.
You see this social media, what these agents are, but the reality is most agents freaking struggling to make ends meet. I've got agents that I talk to every day, and they're like, I don't know, like I can't even pay my month. I just got to get a closing. I got to get a closing, and that closing is to hopefully make up for the bills they missed last month. So if you're not stacking 3 or 4 deals a month as an agent, you're probably not making that much money. And that's the harsh reality of being a realtor. So no, I'm not saying this in defense of realtors. Like, look, we put ourselves in this position by failing to communicate properly. There's no doubt about it. I'm pissed about this whole attorney situation because those attorneys that did that lawsuit, they charge those clients 33% of that money. The average settlement, $600 to those sellers. Way less than what they paid those agents. So what did you really accomplish? A bunch of attorneys got really rich. And that's what a class action lawsuit does. So that attorney that said, well, you don't deserve 6%, just collected 33% of that.
Yep.
So no, it's not just, look, I'm going to work my ass off. I'm going to make my money. I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do. I'm going to make sure my clients are taken care of. But at the end of the day, this is not a defense of realtors because we did put ourselves in this position. But it's the unintended consequences that are going to come with this that I think will very quickly be seen. And people are like, okay, wait, stop. You're telling me that this unrepresented buyer is offering me $50,000 less, and I could have taken that other offer for $50,000 more and only paid $9,000 to get it? It's only going to take one time that person doing that to learn really quickly, hey, we should. And you're not. Sellers, you are not paying for the buyer's agent. You are compensating the listing agent, and the listing agent is splitting their commission with that buyer's agent. And 100%. Guess what? I know my worth. I'm not giving my services away for free. My clients understand that. They know the work that I put into it. You go and you talk to people that I know that will tell you all day long, like, we see the work you put in. We see how much you work. We see how hard you work. I will say this. I'm probably one of the hardest workers I have. Like, I will outwork everybody if I have to. But that's what it takes in this industry. And that's where I think this NAR thing is just kind of smoke and mirrors, make it look cool. The media ran with it for a little bit. It's going to stop getting talked about. It's going to go away eventually. People are going to see the value in realty and real estate agents. Now, do I think that we need to make wholesale industry changes? You're damn right we do.
Yeah.
Do I think there need to be higher standards to be an agent? Absolutely. Jim Bob down the street that got a GED, he's going to work probably harder than some kid, no offense, that has a master's degree in business that thinks he's entitled to come into this industry and just make a fortune. Like, you said it, hard work trumps talent all day long.
All day.
Learned. You can learn how to communicate. Cannot teach a work ethic. And I took heat on this from an agent in my area, I posted a video or something talking about, a lot of people talk about, well, I would rather spend my time with my kids than work too much. And, listen, I get that. And I made some comments about, well, listen, I'm going to miss some things. It's just, I'm going to, I work a lot. I'm going to miss some games. I'm going to miss some events, but guess what? I'm going to be able to pay for my kids to go to college. I'm going to be able to go and take them on trips. I'm going to be able to know that when my kid needs something, they can get it. And I'm not going to have to worry about, well, I went to that T-ball game, but I missed a phone call that could have been a $10,000 commission.
Yeah.
Like, I know that my kids will be taken care of. And I spend a lot of time with my kids and my wife. And my work has created issues in my marriage, and naturally. And I've learned how to taper that back and spend the right time. But at the end of the day, the work I put in has a result, and that result takes care of my family. And if I got to miss a baseball game or a T-ball game or a football game to make sure that I know that if my kid breaks his arm, I'm going to be able to afford that deductible, or I'm going to be able to afford that x-ray, I'm fine with that. Like, I'm comfortable living that life. And if anyone wants to be mad at me for saying that, sorry. If you don't want the business, I'll take it. Yeah. If you're going to go to that game, that's your prerogative. And I'm glad to see people wanting to be engaged with their kids. That's fine. I'll answer that call. I'll be that next call, because one missed call, it's leverage. One missed call can cost you $10,000.
Oh yeah, 100%.
There's no doubt about it. But speed of the lead, one missed call can cost you a ton of money. That $10,000 could turn into $70,000, $80,000, $90,000. Right. The biggest deal I ever did, $6.5 million. It come off a rental lead. The guy was looking for a rental, and we couldn't find what he wanted. 6 months later, he called me, introduced me to a developer. 6 months later, it turned into a $6.5 million deal. Jeez. And I still work with that developer today. We're fixing to put a big property under contract. One call. So look, I spend time with my kids, but you put in that work, people see it. Right. That's who people want to work with. That's why I don't think this is going to have the impact that everybody talks about. 6% commission is not going away, guys. Mm-hmm. But guess what? It was never 6% commission. It was always negotiable. Commission is always negotiable. But I will say, you get what you pay for. If you go to the car store, go to pick up a car. What do you want to buy? You want to buy a Ford, or do you want to buy a Kia? I mean, no shot up Kia buyers, but you go to the store. You're going to spend your money. You want the best. Yeah. Well, that's going to be the same thing in real estate. You get what you pay for. You see cell phone pictures on listings all the time.
Oh yeah.
And those are the ones that sit the longest.
Crazy.
Because they didn't want to spend $500. They're in the background.
Oh man, don't even get me started with those. That it makes me want to call the sellers door knock and be like, "What are you thinking? What are you doing?" Right? Yeah. No, it's just great points. And to your point, right, and everything you just said, you cannot teach that work ethic, right? And also, it's hard to break that mindset with new agents coming in. Like, wait, I have to be on call. I have to. And at the very beginning, if you really want to make it, and I was thinking about LeBron, love him or hate him, he came out and said, hey, it costs a huge price to be great. And when you're thinking about anything in that you do, guys, to be great, it costs something. And for real estate, it costs maybe missing some time, right? Saying no to things. For instance, you just brought up a great example, saying no to maybe a solar eclipse thing. Like, that's not necessary, right? Really and you're in a position where you're like, hey, I have better use of my time. And that's all it is. And so, for all the people out there who are thinking, oh, I'm quick to pull a trigger on people for saying that, first of all, everybody is in a different situation, right? And also, we are grown adults. We have that ability and that responsibility to make the right calls for our situations. So it is easy to judge people and things like that, but I would stay in your lane. Different people, right, have different situations going on, and they're prioritizing a little bit differently. But also to say, you're looking at it with, hey, I may miss a T-ball game, but in reality, I'm actually helping. I'm going to a helping cause. It's just a different mindset with how I'm looking at it. And so I love that. It's great. And for the new agents we talked about, and NAR and everything like that, there's a whole dynamic. So for any new agents out there, don't panic. It's not panic mode, right? Nothing's really changed, because I know we were talking about the NAR lawsuit. And then find mentorship. Find people that you know are going to get through this, who aren't worried, and say, hey, what should I do? right? And I love it when people ask, and we've had Kendall and I have had some conversations with some agents that are on the Neil team are thinking, hey, I finished quarter one, I'm not where I'm at. It's a different conversation when we say, okay, well, you're not where you're at, but you actually called me and said, hey, who else can I call? What else should I be doing? Hey, I just hosted 2 open houses this weekend. I just door knocked 150 homes. Hey, I just made 300 calls. It's a different conversation when you come to us and you say, hey, I'm behind goals.
I've been sitting waiting
And
for
you
people to
didn't
call
do
me.
anything. You haven't done a different conversation. Which conversation are we having? Right. And we'd love to play off of that. And then also you're going to limit yourself from being behind in the first place if you're doing all those activities. So fun stuff, good stuff.
It all goes into, like you said, communication with your clients. And I think listing appointments are going to change that. Obviously, I'm heavy on the list side. I actually, this year, I'm putting a lot of buyers. I like it.
I think you did more buyers than me.
The listing appointments are going to change, and I think that's another thing is, talking about listing appointments and communicating with clients and making sure you're explaining the process the right way, making sure that the seller understands, I call it talking to them like they're a 5-year-old, not saying a seller is immature, but there's a lot of legal language and you got to be able to explain it to them in a way they'll understand. And I think when you deal with, especially listings, and you're learning this very quickly, that working listings and buyers are very different. And I give so much props to buyer's agents because I was a buyer's agent for a little while where I just worked with buyers. And you want to talk about the time and the energy consumed by doing that. And it takes a different breed to be a high producing buyer's agent. And I think on the listing side, you're dealing with one person, one house, and you've got the everybody wants, so to speak. But I think people, when they go into these listing appointments, they need to be more clear and need to explain the listing agreement more in depth so they understand what they're looking at. There's something that I don't do that I may start looking at doing is taking the listing agreement with me. I've never done that before. I typically say, hey, we're going to send it over digitally and then I'll call you and we'll go over it. But people like to be broken down in person. Yesterday I broke down a PSA, a purchase service agreement for a piece of property. And I sat down with the 3 sellers and I literally read the entire contract to them. But I had to, because they need to understand this is a development contract. So it's very different than a Trek 1-4 or an unimproved. And they need to understand what they're signing. And I think that is probably more so what triggered this lawsuit, was that they just weren't clear.
They're just signing it.
And I think the attorneys for NAR were terrible. But I think it's important on the listing side that we go in there confidently, understanding the listing agreement, understanding the compensation structure, understanding what a transaction fee is, understanding that, your job is to seller at all costs. And I say this often and it gets redundant, but your fiduciary trumps your right to compensation all day, every day, which is we don't get paid until it closes in funds. Right. Our priority is making sure the client is protected, whether that means they close or not. I have had people walk away from deals where I don't get paid because I told them to, because this is not in your best interest. That's being a fiduciary. Right. And that's where I think getting that transactional mindset out, especially with listing appointments, is that you're going to go on the market. You have no control over the buyers. They're going to come or not come. Your job is to protect your client no matter what. Right. And I think you can speak to the buyer side better than I can, even though I still work with a good number of buyers, but my buyers are more like, hey, Chris, we found this house. We're going to look at it. I don't deal with the side of it where, hey, I'm typically looking for this model. Let's go see 50 houses. How do you, from the buyer's perspective, and even you can speak on this, how do you handle that? What do you think is going to change with how you handle buyers?
So the biggest thing is most people want instant gratification. That's the biggest thing right now, especially with like these online leads, like these big companies like Zillow, Realtor.com, all the big leads. Instant gratification. So they want to get in the house. If you don't show me the house, I'll find another agent to show the house. I want it. So the first thing is selling the appointment, getting that appointment, getting in front of them, not just trying to sell them right away over the phone. You want to get in front of them. Let them know that, hey, I'm going to work for you. Now, once you've done that, is selling the appointment to meet with them, to go over what actually buying a home is like. That means an actual buyer presentation, because people haven't been doing those for a couple of years now. Like people are just like, oh yeah, I'll just show you and then I'll send you the contract, you sign it. I don't even need to go over it with you. And that's another reason what got us into this is people don't even know what's on the contract. They don't even know what they're signing. Some people read it. Some people do actually read over the contract on their own and sign it. But some people who are buying first home or maybe bought a home in another state are like, oh, I know how to do it, and just sign it. They don't even read it. They just think they're putting in an offer, what you told them. And they could be signing their life away for all they know. But at the end of the day is selling the appointment, getting in front of them, breaking it step by step of what you actually do to buy a home, and building your value, knowing that we're not just opening doors, knowing that we're not just driving them around to show a house. There's way more to it than that. And just going over the actual presentation. Don't even try to sell the house. Sell the presentation, sell yourself, and they will find the right house. The house will come. You just got to find out exactly what they're looking for. But that's how you're going to gain value. I mean, that's how you're going to gain people's trust and have them actually want to work with you and have them actually want to pay you. Even if the sellers do still pay you, they will offer to pay you if you're giving them the value. That's just how it is. Like I've had plenty of clients say like, oh, do I pay you? Like, do I pay you now? Do I pay you at closing? I'm like, no, you don't pay me. It's coming from the seller side. But now at the end of the day, again, I personally still think it's up from the seller side. I do. I don't think anything's going to change. I mean, like you said, for a couple of months, it's going to be like a little bit of a hiccup. People trying to do stuff. And once they realize, okay, my house has been on the market 180 days, but my neighbor's house was on it for 30 days. Why did theirs sell? We had the same floor plan. What happened? Well, they paid a buyer's agent. You're not. And yours is 10,000 more because you want to make more money. So it's just going to be a market where people are going to learn after, like kind of how we learn, trial and error. The seller's going to learn by making all these mistakes. And they're like, okay, we can't do that anymore. And then it's going to become a nationwide thing where we're back to normal.
And it's not going to be like a shady thing. Like the sellers are going to be like, people are going to see this and like, well, y'all are intentionally not showing in my house. No, like there's going to be, I would bet you there's going to be some kind of search parameter set up or something where they're like, hey, look, I need an agent, but I can't afford to pay you because I only have this amount of money and this is what I need. Let's only look at houses that the seller's going to compensate you. Yeah. That is going to happen. There is going to be some very serious conversations around steering. And I think that's another one of the unintended consequences. No, I'm not trying to not sell your house because I don't get paid if I don't sell your house.
And I was going to say steering is going to become a huge thing.
It's going to be forced. Yeah. Buyers are going to tell you, only show me houses that sellers are compensating you because I can't afford to, or I can't afford to buy this house that I need for my family. That's just a fact. Like, I don't see any other way around it.
Yeah, no, 100%. Or like they might be, hey, we're going to offer less, but we want to go ahead and ask them to pay the commission so we can afford the payment. It's not good. There's just no way around it. So I don't see any changes coming from it. Just a little bit of a hiccup in the road and then get back to normal.
Yeah. Business as usual.
Yep.
We've gone pretty heavy on real estate, and this is, I guess it's a real estate podcast, but we like to talk about a lot of different things. And Ryan and I have some very, very big sports interests common. And well, yeah, you're okay. You do too. But I mean, I'm sorry. Okay. Oh yeah, I forgot about the text. College football.
There you go.
It's a couple months away. Spring camps are heating up. We had a big game this year. Huge game this year. Texas versus Texas A&M in College Station, bringing back the rivalry from the 27-25 loss in Kyle Field when the Aggies played Texas in 2011. They're going to reignite this rivalry. What do you? Right? They kicked the LSU game out and reignited it, or they're going to start it again on Thanksgiving. What do you think the experience is going to be like there?
You know, I think this is going to be probably
electric.
Well,
like it's going to be huge.
We have two different dynamics when it comes to Texas. He goes with very heavy, like we're going to, whoop them. I'm very much. So first of all, let me answer your question first. How's the experience? I think it's going to be fantastic. We've needed this for a while. Texas being the epicenter for football has needed this. I mean, there was no reason why we should have gotten away with this for so long. I was blessed to be at that last game in 2011. Texas did win a game-winning field goal. It's been a competitive. I mean, no matter what in a rivalry game, it's competitive. Juices are flowing. I mean, Texas could be 0-11. Texas A&M could be 0-11.
Texas had no business winning that game in 2011.
Either way, you're going to get the team's best shots. And we've seen that from a Texas OU perspective, where Texas has been down and we've actually done really well against OU at times. And so I thought the experience is going to be great. I think some of the prices for the tickets could be the most we've seen, ever essentially, or in a recent times. So for a regular season game, I think it's awesome. I do plan on going, at least being in that vibe. I think it's going to be electric, to answer the question for the experience. Now, I will say for the Texas fans, we're coming off a hot year. This is a different dynamic,
Right.
right? And one we have not been in a little bit of time, where we're coming off huge high expectations. One that was the most recent time when we came off the Sugar Bowl win with Georgia. And
We're
there was
back.
Play them this year.
huge expectations going into that new year. And I remember, in my opinion, that next year we played Joe Burrow, game 2 in Austin. I was blessed to be at that game, and we were very close to beating that team, which now people are calling it one of the best teams ever, Joe Burrow LSU team. And I think that changed the dynamic. Yeah, I think that changed the dynamic for the season. I think if we had won that game, our season would have been different.
Much like the Alabama win this year.
Yeah. And I think too, I think that played out for a reason, because I think we would have still had Tom Herman had we won that game. We have Sark, and I love Sark. But this is now a different stress. This is a different dynamic. There's a lot of now, going into it, Michigan week 2, going to be tough, even without Jim Harbaugh, even without JJ McCarthy. I think the season is going to have challenges, not only outside pressure, but on the field pressure. We have Michigan week 2. We're going to, a lot of people are talking about the Georgia game, but I want to tell you, SEC schedule has 2 bye weeks, which is very good. Thank goodness. Obviously, we have some time to rest, recover. But I will tell you, thankfully, we have a bye week before Oklahoma and then Georgia, which is huge. Nobody's really talking about. We have a bye week before that.
Don't you have something going on that Georgia
game? Yeah. I'm getting married, so
what?
It's huge. Yeah, I know.
That's like having a kid during deer season. What do you think?
Yeah, it's
Alexis. If you're listening to this, we're to talk.
Well, unfortunately, I had told her, I have a feeling like this is going to be Georgia's weekend. And with the venues, you know how they are. You better book them or else they're gone. And I was like, the next time was like December, for this one video. So I was like, oh man, I just have a feeling like it is. And sure enough, 3 weeks later, Georgia's game. But it's okay. No matter what, I went to that Georgia-Texas game in New Orleans. Fantastic game. But it's exciting. It's a new excitement.
Oh, yeah.
But too, just around the season. But that game in particular worries me, just because OU, Georgia, nobody's talking about the Florida game. Nobody's talking about Mississippi State. And unfortunately, too, Texas has always had a target on their back.
Oh, yeah.
Now coming into the SEC, too, it's going to be hey, we're going to show you SEC ball is different. And also, oh, by the way, don't overlook us because we're Mississippi State. Don't overlook us, right? Because we're Florida and we have some down years. Don't overlook us, because when we go up and we play, and Texas has been known to playing really high for top competition, and then we play low to lower competition. We've seen that in Kansas recent years, UTSA. Now, I do believe we have the talent to play with anybody. I do believe we have the talent to win the national championship this year, 100%. I think there's a lot of factors that go into it. We got to stay healthy.
Yep.
I think Quinn is going to have a lot of pressure coming in, because obviously he's the guy, right? Because Sark has said, hey, you're number 1. But also there's going to be a Heisman expectation. There's really no Caleb Williams in the mix, no Bo Nix, no some of these other big names that are quarterbacks. It's like, hey, you're the guy, Dylan Gabriel now transferred to Oregon, which thankfully we don't have to face him again with OU. I feel like he had his best game against us. But I think, looking at it for Texas as a whole, the A&M game does worry me in regards to, I do believe we can be in a playoff contention. And I know how Kyle Field is. I know how Kyle Field is. I mean, that is the loudest game I have ever been to, and I know how they are. And I think that game, even if you don't have a ticket, I think you can get in. Deal with what you want with that. That's how I was with Texas OU. I gave the guy $20 to get in, and that's how I think it is. I think they're going to say just pack the house. But who knows? It could be an opportunity for both to get into the playoff game for SEC championship dynamic. I don't know. I don't know how A&M is, and I'm not going to go out on a limb and say, hey, we're going to crush them. I do believe it's going to be an exciting, electric environment, and no matter what the records are, it's going to be a fun game.
Yeah, I think it's going to be probably the wildest game I've ever seen. Just because the dynamic coming back, it being in Kyle Field, I'm somehow, some way, I'm going to that game.
Yeah, for sure.
And I know that I've got a lot of friends that are Aggies, so I get to just razz the hell out of them. But I think you touched on it earlier. Texas is in a different place because of development.
Right.
Like, Texas always has talent. They've had talent forever. I mean, outside of what I'd say 12, 13, they've always had talent. Now you're seeing somebody develop that talent. Getting Quinn Ewers to come back for another year, that was huge. Like, don't get me wrong, I really like Manning. I think he's going to be great.
Yeah, ready yet.
But, I mean, I think he's got another year he needs to learn. But Quinn, his ability to process the field, I think he's going to have to work on some of his release points, stuff like that. But I think this Texas A&M game, it's going to go one of two ways. I think Texas is going to get the W because I think A&M's in a rebuilding phase. I really do.
Yeah.
I think Jimbo Fisher really put that program behind the 8 ball. But I think if you go into that stadium thinking that you're just going to dominate, you're going to get your ass whipped.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Just like when A&M in 2011 went on the Kyle Field to play Texas. They thought they were walk all over Case McCoy and that Longhorn football team, and they didn't. They had the number 1 pick in Brian Tannehill playing quarterback. I believe he was the number 1 pick to the Dolphins, and Texas won on a last-minute field goal. So you're going to have to go in with the right mindset, and that's what I like about this team is because going into that Alabama game last year, I thought for sure they were going to lose. I thought for sure because they played them really tight the year before, but this is in Tuscaloosa. They won that game. I thought this team's going to run the field, and they lost to Oklahoma. Not lucky. They got in. They didn't get lucky, but the chips fell favorably
that wasn't
for them.
our best game either. I know we watched it
No.
together against Oklahoma. And to even be in the position where we were at, we kicked a field goal with 1 minute left and we're winning. I mean, if you told me, hey, we're winning with 1 minute left, I'm feeling good. Now, obviously, Dylan Gabriel, fantastic game, but our defense probably could have played a little bit better. But it's okay. Aside from that too, I want to say, this is the best case scenario for Texas to have Quinn come back.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I was thinking about it at the very beginning of the season that there were maybe talks about it because I know we had a 3-headed monster with Malik Murphy in the mix too.
Mhm.
And shout out to Malik. He did help us. We wouldn't have, he went to Duke. We wouldn't have been in the playoff without Malik. He did his part. He did his job. It wasn't the prettiest, but he did his job. We got the W in all the games that he came in. And so that was really exciting because I know the previous year when Hudson Card had to come in versus Texas Tech game right after Alabama, I believe, or one of those, we lost to Texas Tech. So looking at it, this is best case scenario for Quinn to come back. I'm telling you, there are a lot of Arch Manning fans.
Oh, yeah.
I went to the last game when we were in last DKR game when we played Tech, and he came in. The roars for Arch Manning, and I was one of them. I was excited because I was like, hell yeah, this is fun. We have a Manning. Like it's exciting. There's a different energy around, and for him to come back and for Arch to be able to be in a world of NIL transfers, everything like that, how awesome is it for him to be committed to the University of Texas and stay here and be like, you know what, I'm okay. Because it isn't just about the money for him. It isn't just about like, hey, I need to play right now. It's more about he's looking long term of like, hey, this is better for my career. Because he redshirted, right? And he's still going to be coming in with tons of years of eligibility. I predict we'll have Quinn this year, obviously, and then 2, health-wise, hopefully 2 solid years of Arch Manning where it's like, hey, we can really start gaining some momentum with Texas football truly, dare I say, be back right in the mix. And that's what we want.
Yeah.
That's all we want every single time. And I've seen a lot of podcasts. All we want as Texas fans is just to say, hey, we're in national title contention mix. Yeah. We're either going for the conference championship and then it's national title. And now with the playoff being to 12 teams, there is no reason why we should not be the next Alabama of making it into a playoff. And when we don't make it into the playoffs, it's wow, that's
what's
crazy.
wrong?
What's wrong with us? Yeah. And now back to those levels of expectation. So I love Sark. I love what he's done. I'm trusting the process. He can keep with this momentum because it's tough. Texas, I mean, you lose one game, everybody wants your head off. I think about Rodney Terry with men's basketball, things like that. That's a different thing, but it's tough. So I'm trusting. Alabama wanted him. Speaks volumes. I do really respect the Alabama program. If they wanted Sark and they were going after him, I think we got the guy. Now I'm really excited for what's ahead.
It's going to be a fun season. I think Texas football is in really good hands. I think even, the rivalry aside, you're now a rival for the entire SEC. Oh, and I look at Texas football like Dallas Cowboys football. Everybody plays you and they play to their best.
Texas and Dallas Cowboys in the college program.
Yeah, and so it's going to be a lot of just they're going to come after Quinn. They're going to come after that offensive line, and they're kind of rebuilding that offensive line. Having Kelvin Banks come back was
huge.
Oh my God, so massive. So it's going to be an interesting college football year, interesting NFL year. I'm excited about this season. That's going to pretty much do it for today. I know we had another topic, but man, we're an hour and 41 minutes into this thing already. So
that's it. We could probably keep talking.
We could talk for hours.
Joe Rogan podcast on here.
And
do like a
6 hour. Yeah. So Ryan, I really, really appreciate you coming on. It's good to have someone like you on the team working with these agents, doing something that I couldn't do. I that's just not my forte. And we appreciate you coming on, and hopefully you'll come back on.
Yeah, appreciate it. Let's do it again, maybe around the football season, see how things
Oh,
are
yeah.
going at that
Oh,
time.
hell yeah.
And
Hopefully by that time we're, millionaires off this podcast, and we have our own like studio
We have a
and
billion followers. And
yeah, Joe Rogan, watch out, buddy. But for episode 4 of the Just One More podcast, I want to thank all of y'all for tuning in, and have a great week. And we'll try to get this up here as quick as possible. And we'll see y'all here in a couple weeks.
all right, guys. See y'all later.